friends. It's so good to be back with you again, and I'm so excited about another opportunity to hear about the character of God. There's nothing more important for us to do than to gaze on his character. But before we do that, I'm sitting here with some very lovely ladies, and it's so exciting to have them here with me. Little introductions. Does the famous Susan Webley need an introduction?
Yes. I don't know about that.
She's like the wind beneath. No, she's.
You can sing it if you like.
Don't get me started. Okay. Start all over.
She still edits really well. Yeah, there you go. I like it.
Would you help me? She's the wind beneath our wings. Susan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and save me from myself right now?
Okay. As she said, Susan Webley, and Brian and I have been married 44 years. We have 3 adult children and 2 grandchildren who we adore. 2 of our children live here, and a daughter-in-law and a daughter and son-in-law in Chicago, so we don't get to see them as often. We've been at Faith Bible Church for 25 years, so long time, and I'm just happy to be part of this video and learn more about the mercy of God.
Yay, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
And then over here, we have Talitha Seymour. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. So I'm married to Justin. We've been married about 6 years. We have 2 little ones. We have Weston, who's 2.5, and we have Savannah, who's 3 months old. And I work per diem as a PACU nurse, so post-anesthesia care unit. So patients that are pretty much still asleep when I get them from surgery. Yeah, been at Faith Bible Church, I think, 4 years now. This Easter will be 4 years.
It's so good to have you. And, you guys can pull her aside on a Sunday morning, ask her for funny stories about what people say when they're coming out of anesthesia. She's got lots of those.
Yes.
Well, it's so good to have you here today. And last but not least, Christy Swanson is here today, and she's going to teach for us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Christy.
I'm married to Joe Swanson. We've been married 29 years, and we have 5 kids. I have 1 daughter and son-in-law that live here in town, and then I have 4 that live at home still, teenagers, and a couple of teenage girls. Kylie's 15, Ona's 13, and then I have Henry and Evie are both 10 and 11, I guess. They're different now, but so my kids are adopted, so it makes our family kind of interesting and different.
Yes, it's good. Love that. Wonderful. Well, I'm going to open us up in prayer, and we're going to jump into today's lesson. Father, we are forever grateful for the mercy that we have received, that you look on our sinful condition with mercy and compassion and pity, and that mercy is new every morning. Thank you so much that we sit right now as we listen to this talk in that mercy. And I do pray for Christy that you would just bless her as she just seeks to be your messenger and hold you up high. And I pray that your word would go out this month and that it would be planted deeply in all of our hearts, and that we would not forget the mercy that we've received, that we'd be forever grateful women, and that we would then extend it to others. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. So I thought we'd just start by talking about what mercy is. And I thought, I've learned Spanish because we lived in Mexico for a little while. And the word that they use for mercy in Spanish is actually misericordia, which has the word misery in it. And it's sort of a good little example of the fact that without misery, we don't really understand mercy. So mercy and misery go hand in hand. So I asked you ladies if you would give me a story, because mercy is ultimately about God rescuing his people from their misery and from their guilt. So I said, let's share with each other kind of what's your favorite rescue story, maybe a book or a movie or something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
go first.
Go.
The one that came to mind for me is the Chronicles of Narnia and just the story of Aslan, like laying down his life. Of course, it has like biblical undertones because it's C.S. Lewis. But when I was pregnant with Savannah, I had trouble sleeping, as one does often when they're third trimester. And so Justin would read we went through the whole series together, and he would read them to me, and that one just really stuck with me of just the richness of sacrifice in that, and it's just such a good story. So that one's my favorite one.
Cool. How about you, Susan?
I came up with a couple of them. I went to the Bible first for one, and the one that stuck in my mind was the parting of the Red Sea for the Israelites. They were at a point where they thought that they were doomed. And, you know, with the fact that they were at a place where they couldn't go any further, and then the Lord parted the Red Sea, that's just a miracle to me to even think about, and gave them an out and took care of that for them. I thought was just really remarkable. So that's one of my favorites. And the other one was a movie that I really enjoy, and it's Hacksaw Ridge. And it's the Desmond Doss who refused to bear arms and found a way to serve his country. And I think it was the Battle of Okinawa that he was up on the ridge, and he saved 75 men without shooting a shot, was able to rescue them. And I know the movie probably has liberties in there, but just the fact that somebody could be so faithful to his faith and stand firm and then save all these lives. And he was criticized for it early on, and then they found him to be remarkable. And that was just one of my favorite stories.
Yeah.
I watch that one off and on just to, feel that again.
Yeah.
My mind went to, I think I've shared this maybe in one of our talks with you guys, so you guys might remember this, but Dan and I are walking on Rockaway Beach in the Oregon coast, and we look in the distance and we see a helicopter lowering a bucket. And we think, oh no, somebody's drowning. And sure enough, somebody went down with that bucket, and we were far away, so we couldn't see the details of it, but they put the person in, and then the helicopter brought the person to the shore, and then there was an ambulance. So just the utter helplessness of the person that was being rescued, and the great measures that were taken to rescue that person that really stood out to me, and how it's similar to our own spiritual rescue story.
Yeah, right? Where we couldn't do anything. We were completely miserable. That's what it means to be completely miserable, right? There's nothing you can do about your condition, really. I was thinking about this, and the one that always comes in my mind, and we'll kind of, I want us to talk about as we just discover what mercy is in the heart of God, is the story of Hagar in Genesis. And I want us to just kind of walk through it, because I think Kelly mentioned in October, that none of the attributes of God exist in isolation. And mercy is one of those ones that you kind of have to see alongside of other attributes of God. It comes hand in hand a lot of times when you read about it in the scriptures. It's mercy and grace. It's mercy and love, his steadfast love and his mercy, loving kindness. So we're going to sort of walk through, because I think mercy is kind of how God acts toward his people. It's a characteristic way he acts toward his people. And so he is the great rescuer. So we're going to talk about Hagar, who was not an obvious recipient of God's mercy, in that she's in Genesis, and she's the concubine of Abraham. His wife is Sarah. She can't have any children. And so she, in their attempt to do something about their miserable condition, Abraham and Sarah decide to have this terrible plan, which is to use this servant girl to be Abraham's baby mom, in a sense. So she gets pregnant and has a baby, and they name him Ishmael. while she's pregnant with him, she finds herself in a miserable condition because Sarah treats her terribly. And I mean, I understand that would be a very big temptation to be despising her, since she has this thing that she had wanted for so long. And so she runs away, sort of in a typical worldly way. She's in a miserable condition. We're always trying to get ourselves out of that. She runs away, and God meets her there. And what I want us to see first is that one of the things that goes hand in hand with God's mercy is that he sees us, right? He knows what's going on in our lives. So his omniscience, that he knows everything, his omnipresence, that he's everywhere, right? And his omnipotence, we're going to talk about in a minute, all kind of play into his mercy, because he knew Hagar, the condition she was in, how she got there, and what she was trying to do to get out of her miserable condition. And he met her there in the desert. And he didn't just see her there, but he loved her, right? He saw her and his heart was moved in love toward her. He told her, he said, you need to go back home. I've got a plan for your child too, because she probably knew there was a promise involved and why Abraham and Sarah were trying so hard to have a child. God says that her child should be called Ishmael, meaning God hears. Like, I not only see what's going on with you, but I hear what's happening. And in love, my heart is moved toward you. And so God's mercy is united with his love. It is the nature of God to have compassion on the miserable and the guilty. And so often in our misery, we are also guilty. He doesn't just see it, but his heart has pity and he wants to help Hagar. So he sends her back and he gives her a promise, I'm going to take care of you and your child too. So there's God's mercy with, he sees us. There's God's mercy with, he loves us. And then he acts. He not only knows her need, but he also has the power to alleviate her pain and misery. That happens again. Like, really the most poignant part of her story is in Genesis 21, when Hagar kind of gives, her son gets in trouble with Abraham, right? He's making fun of, as so many teenager boys will do. He's poking at the little boy who is now the child of promise. And Abraham gets permission from God, in a sense, to throw him out. And he kicks Hagar and her son out into the desert. Again, quite a miserable condition. If you've ever spent any time just being hot and bothered in a desert, I can't imagine just being, kicked out of your home and pushed into the desert to try to scrape some kind of living out. So she goes out there and must have had some provisions, but they ran out. And her son is under a bush. She leaves him there under a bush and says, I don't want to watch you die. And she goes over here and weeps. And that's her miserable position. And God hears her crying. Again, we see that he sees her. In Genesis 21:17 says, God heard the voice of the boy. That the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? And again, even his speaking to her shows his mercy. It's an act of mercy on his part. Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Again, God hears and sees Hagar. He knows her need. And in love, he comes to her. Again, he reiterates his promise to use his powerful goodness on her behalf. This is compassion. This is his mercy. God's mercy here is united with his power. God is all powerful. He not only knows everything and sees everything, but he is able to do acts of mercy to rescue us. Jeremiah 32:17 says, Ah, Lord God, it is you who have made the heavens and the earth. By your great power and by your outstretched arm, nothing is too hard for you. God not only sees our suffering and our guilt and turns his compassion towards us, but he's also omnipotent in that he's able to show mercy and do something to alleviate our suffering and guilt. He is able. Again, in Genesis 21, Hagar receives instructions to save her son. and the promises of God on his behalf. But God also reaches out to her right in that moment with his power. He says in verse 19, God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. That doesn't sound like some Marvel movie power display. Okay, no Spidey powers. He didn't like give her some magical something to make water for her. And I'm not sure if it was a well that was already there and she just didn't know, or if he just created a well there on the spot. But in his omnipotence, God created a water source for her, that met her need right there, and then allowed her to see it. He gave her eyes to see that. So God in his power can open our eyes and teach us how to have compassion on our children, right? Because there she was, and her son was in a miserable condition, and she didn't know what to do. She left him to die. And so often I think all of us probably could relate in a sense to a miserable condition where we just didn't know what to do when it came to our children, whether it's that they're sick or teenagers struggling with friendships, or even I could think, I've thought sometimes how I've struggled far away from my family, and just us older moms that have kids out of the home already, not having a lot of ability to do something, how we need the wisdom of God to know how to have mercy and compassion on our children. So we have a powerful God who is able to help us and know how to have mercy on our children. So lastly, we know that God's mercy is united to his goodness and his kindness and his grace. We see God's grace to Hagar and Ishmael in Genesis 21, and that the well was a good well, right? It was full of life-giving water for those who drink, who on the brink of death and dehydration. God didn't have to, but he kind of gives us like a happy ending for Hagar and Ishmael right there. I was watching this movie recently with my husband, and it was one of those old Western movies that we're like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to watch a movie that didn't have any yucky stuff in it? So we got this old Western movie. But what it also didn't have was any outtakes. Right? At the end of the story, the cowboy gets the girl and the ranch is saved and all the bad guys are killed on the ground. And all that happens at the end is they roll the credits. And you're like, oh, I wonder if they got married. I wonder what happened, right? I wonder what was the outcome of this conflict. And here God gives us the outtakes, which he doesn't have to do, but he does. Genesis 21:20-21 says, God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. And while we know this isn't God's child of promise, he did take care of Ishmael, and he took care of Hagar in his mercy. And because of his goodness, the gifts he gave, the outtakes for Ishmael, weren't really bad ones. I mean, he becomes good at something, he has a family, and God prospers him in the wilderness, which is a hard place to live. So what? What does this story about Hagar and Ishmael have to do with us? And where I want us to go, we were going to read some scriptures. I wonder if somebody could read for us Ephesians 2:4-5.
Can you do that one?
All right, Linda can do that.
But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespass, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved.
All right. So they're in the middle. These two verses are in the middle of a passage in Ephesians that starts by telling us how we were all dead in our trespasses and sins. And it goes on to tell us in the ways that we once walked, our disobedience and disrespect for authority, and basically a condition of spiritual misery and death. My grandpa used to say, dead people don't come alive by themselves. And that's kind of the situation that we all find ourselves in without Christ, right? We're all in sin, and because this world has been cursed because of sin, we find ourselves in a lot of misery, sickness, and trouble and trials. But verse 4 and 5 that Linda just read has those two famous words, but God.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the mercy words right there. Because without him, everyone stays in a position of misery and guilt. So God knows, right? Just like he knew with Hagar, he knows that we're dead in our trespasses and sins without him. He knows that we walked in the ways of this world, that the influences that are shaping our lives and the rebellion that we practiced against him and his ways. He knows that we were living according to whatever fashion was trendy and what we desired with our eyes and longed for in our bodies and our minds. By nature, we were children of wrath, just like the rest of mankind. Then, but God, says verse 4, with those two words, which changed everything for us, right? He's rich in mercy. He's united with this great love, with even which he's loved us, even us, who were dead. And death is like the epitome of the most miserable condition, right? Let's talk for a little bit about like what is your, like what's something that you feel like God has rescued you from?
When I was thinking about his mercy and being miserable, I go back to what a lot of I think our young moms can probably relate to is when I had my second baby, he didn't sleep or eat well. And it was a miserable first year. I was tired to the point of absolute exhaustion. He'd eat just a little bit and fall asleep. And so he was always hungry. And so he'd wake up. And so our nights were very long, our days were very long. And I just remember calling out to God, I need some rest. I'm going to collapse. I'm not going to be able to take care of this baby and my toddler without some help. And friends from the church surrounded me and came to my rescue and cleaned my house and held him so I could sleep. And in his mercy, when he turned a year old, he turned a corner and everything was great. He was my easiest child from there on. So to me, that was mercy.
Yeah, totally.
Because he could have continued to be a hard child and a hard day. I had a friend just the other day that commented on how tired I was, and that was 38 years ago. So she remembers. I think I was in a fog, and so I don't remember it in the way some of my friends do, and they will comment on how I could barely come to Bible study or to church, and yet we'd do everything we could. And I thought, man, I'm never going to get out of this, and the Lord took care of it. So
Totally.
I am just so grateful for that. That was mercy.
Yeah, that is mercy. How about you, Talita?
Mine is actually kind of similar to Susan's. My mind goes to the first few months of Weston's life. And my husband was working 80 hours a week, every single week. We have no family here. So, and Weston was a very colicky baby. I mean, he just cried for the first 4 months of his life straight. I don't think he ever stopped crying. And I remember feeling so alone and just crying out to the Lord, you know. I mean, that's hard when you are just by yourself with a sad baby all day, every day, you know. And so I think what the mercy was in that situation was I had kind of been stagnant in my faith for a little bit. You know, nothing serious, but I just had not felt that like deep connection to the Lord and that desire to know him like strongly for a little while, and going through that situation where it felt like everything else was just stripped away. You know, I was away from my best friends that I had made in college and, you know, adjusting to being a parent and basically doing it for the most part by myself. But through that, God just ushered in this period of spiritual blessing and enrichment. And this is so sad, but there were a lot of days where I would go to the cathedral, like St. John's Cathedral, and I would just sit in their big auditorium, or what do you call it? Like the cathedral.
Mhm.
It's so beautiful in there. And I would just cry and journal in my Bible. And, Weston would be sitting next to me in his little baby carrier. But I really felt like God used that as a way to grow my roots deeper in Him. And I'm still feeling the benefits, of that spiritual richness. So
That's a great story.
How about you, Linda? Do you have a good
Those are
rescue
such
story?
sweet stories through God's mercy. Yeah. My mind went to not a mom story, which I do have those too. I did have my low moments raising little ones too, for sure. But just, I was a very miserable high school girl. And the Lord plucked me out of my environment I was in, and good old Yakima, Washington. I mean, that's probably why I was miserable. No, I'm just kidding. Then I landed at the Master's College and heard a message that said, examine yourself whether you be in the faith, from 2 Corinthians 13:5. And I feel like after that, I cried out to the Lord, and I said, I don't know if I'm yours, but I want to be yours. And His mercy flooded my life at that moment. And the deep misery that I had, that was the result of just trying to be like the world, trying to fit in, trying to find my identity in something other than Christ. But it had great consequences in my life. So His mercy that poured on me at that moment has been with me ever since. So it was a true rescue.
Right. Yeah, and that is the salvation story, is obviously all of our best rescue story. How we didn't bring anything to the table for that. We were dead, right?
Yes.
That's what I was talking about. I was a young wife with a husband in school, and we didn't have 2 dimes to rub together, literally. And I had to go to work every day for the first time in my life. I'm an artist and a musician, and I kind of live life in the moment. I'm not much of a planner. And so I was looking for a job to try to support my husband while he was in school. And I got this job as a medical records supervisor for 44 doctors. Back before computers and electronics and all that stuff was part of it. So I just had this huge file room. I was in charge of all the files and all the people who were organizing the files and stuff. And let's just say that was a condition of misery that I cannot explain. Unless you're like me.
I really love that job.
Yes. Okay, you, my husband. I mean, a lot of people.
I think that sounds terrible.
It was for me. It was like, I was like, what was I thinking? But here I'm supporting my family. I mean, I just found myself being the breadwinner. I'm totally trying to support my family. And I literally would go downstairs to the break room and cry and then come back up and do a miserable job at my job. And it was just, I can't organize anything to save my life. So my husband kept on saying, and again, this is a wonderful example of how you should listen to your husbands and be submissive, because he would always say, you need to go out there and try to find a teaching job or something that you're good at. Like, okay. And I'm like, no, nobody will pay me because I don't have that kind of degree. And so, but God, one of the doctors in my office had his kids in a little Christian school in the area. And I think he got wind. He found out who I was and what I was really about, because it was obviously not medical records. And he pulled me in his office one day and he said, what would you think of like teaching music at a Christian school? And I mean, let me just say to you ladies, it's like a true mercy story, because I did nothing to deserve that. Okay. I had not gotten better at my job. My attitude had not gotten better about it. I was not in a good place. And it was like God just went, and there it was. And he's like, here, I've got this job for you. Wow. He was on the board of this school and he got in with me in an interview, and the rest is kind of history. I've been doing that ever since. I remember going to work there my first week, and I told my husband, I said, I could do this for free. This is so fun. So I felt like that was just a huge rescue in my life. I had disobeyed God in a sense by not doing what Joe told me to do. And God had rescued me anyway. And so there I was, and I Now I do a lot of that. If you know me, you know that's pretty much been the story of my life. So there's our rescue stories. Death is what I was saying to you is sort of the ultimate rescue. All of us have been sitting around this table, saved by God's grace and His mercy. The but God in our lives is what brings us together as Christian sisters here today, and talking to you moms and wanting to encourage you that God's heart towards you is mercy. And that His great power is come to save you. That's what it's here for. By His power, God made us alive together with Christ. That's where we're going. Like, I got my ideal job, but what we all get is our ideal place in God's kingdom. At the end of that passage in Ephesians, after it says, but God is rich in mercy, even with the love that He loved us, sent His Son to save us. At the end of that, it says, and you're His workmanship, right? Created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared in advance for you to walk in. So His mercy is what brings us to the places that we are, to show mercy. And mercy is one of God's commutable attributes. They say the one that He can actually share with us, and He actually requires that of us. It says, blessed are the merciful, right? In Matthew chapter 5, for they shall receive mercy. So we're supposed to emulate this seeing of others, pitying them, and in love. And by whatever powers God has given us, right? But in His great grace to us, we're supposed to share that mercy, those acts of mercy with our children and our husbands and the church that we're in and the communities that He has us in. So we are recipients and also givers of mercy. So that's all I have for you guys today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was wonderful. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, ladies. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you meditate on God's mercy this month, and we'll see you next time.